So we're going to go on this journey today. So this survey, oh look, I love it. So now I can see. Now, I'm feeling better now. I'm going to take a big deep breath. Whew. It's nothing like that little stress right before we get started. But great, so I see colleagues, parents, curious about creating an inclusive workspace. So I'm so excited to see all of these different things here. But when we did this survey, basically what we had is we had 1,000 Gen Z, and they were 18 to 30 years old. But basically what we're seeing is, are you ready? Think about this, walk a day in their shoes. 71%, think back when you were in your 20s, 71% are actually hourly, all right? And then 69% work outside their home. And basically that enables us to, again, walk a day in their shoes. There's a lot of return to office. And yes, that's a thing, but guess what? Most are actually working outside of their home. And then still in school, half of the people we talk to are still in school. So what I want you to do is actually channel your Gen Z, younger 20-year-old self. Everybody put a thumbs up in that chat if you get that. Are we here to channel? And then Mackenzie, what I'd love to do is that let's go ahead and get that screen, the chat out, and just go back to the full screen so I can actually see the full screen there. And don't worry about the chat for now. All right, this is how technology goes. This is how we have to just on the fly do that. And actually, if you can make sure I can see myself too, we're kind of going, we're going with the flow here. So Mackenzie, I'm looking for the screen that it's the screen, but you can see me as well. All right, so got to go through all this. But I want to ask you guys a favor, is that if you are loving what you're seeing, I would love to appreciate how we can actually post on social media and really get out there, get this message out there, because I think it is going to be pretty interesting. And my promise to you today is actually, you're gonna walk away, I hope, with some key ideas and key thinking, and importantly, have some tools and things to action. So let's keep going. The first thing that I wanna talk, so we have our Gen Z mindset on, and I wanna make sure that I cover just a couple of points up front, because everybody's like, what's going on with the economy? How are people feeling? And basically, this is a chart, if you've been following me for a while, the idea of the data is if I am in the green, 24% of Gen Z are saying, you know what, I'm spending as usual. And that's just the way they are feeling right now about the economy. But if you look up on the far right-hand side, it's basically 31% have stopped their spending and they're anxious. But everybody is in the middle at 45% is actually the biggest. And let me just show you how it goes. Gen Z is actually the highest on spending as usual, but then Gen X, they're actually less nervous, but then they're also spending less. So the reason this is important, and if you guys were getting these emails, and I know we sent you a lot, but we were just so excited to have you come today. I didn't spend a lot of time introducing myself, telling about myself, because we have so much here today that I just wanted to dig right in. Harrison's gonna drop in the chat. I put together this little PDF just so you could get to know me a little bit more, and we didn't have to spend time on it. But I wanted to pause on this chart because it's really the foundation of what you're gonna see today in the sense of this principle. Now, if you've been following me for the last 5 years, there was this idea I came up with, this aha moment, that was when joy was greater than fear, the economic recovery would begin. And that little idea back in March of 2020 set me off on this whole adventure of the business of joy. But what happened in about 2023 is COVID was no longer a fear, but the economy became a little bit of an issue. People are concerned about the economy. But I started thinking about Gen Z, and through all of the data, I kept seeing and feeling how their lives were basically interrupted during the pandemic. So what you're gonna see today is this idea that when joy is greater than fear, growth begins. So, but we're gonna put it through the lens of Gen Z. Now, if you have parents or you are a manager of Gen Z, maybe you've said this before. I know I have. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are Gen Z, one's a millennial. Well, when I grew up, when I was your age, I think we need to stop saying that, because what I'm going to show you today is that it really is different for Gen Z. And I hope that you take away some really important insights that make you appreciate and understand this generation has so much to offer, but they've grown up in a different world. So when you catch yourself saying that, well, when I grew up, or these Gen Zs, they just don't get it these days, they're not working hard. Well, I'm going to show you, and I think it's going to be eye-opening about these lessons that we're learning. Okay, so hopefully we are ready to go here. Our 3 chapters are this idea. The first one I'm going to take you through is this idea of they grew up in a world where they were protected more than they were prepared. The next chapter is this idea, as humans, we are absolutely born to discover, but this generation grew up in a world where they feel like they have to defend themselves on so many different levels. And then what I'm going to close, and I'm going to spend the most time on this last section about when joy is greater than fear, growth begins. And I will tell you, this has been a humbling experience for me, this Gen Z work. For those of you that know me well, I've been kind of quietly working on this for the last 2 years almost. But what's happened is when we did this survey just a few weeks ago, I had a question at the end. And I asked the Gen Z, I'm like, is there anything else that you want to add? And I thought they would add about their life, their work, or I hated the survey or whatever. And you know what they said? Is they said that it was actually something they had never seen before. And so that is where we have to understand these questions came from their hearts, and I put them into a survey, and their hearts and their insights came back to us. So let's dig in. A timeline. How did we get here? There's a great book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. There's another book he wrote called The Coddling of the American Mind. We'll make sure to put these in. But what happened is when we think about protected, not prepared, look at all these things on the top of the chart here. We had Obama elected, Occupy Wall Street, BLM, same-sex marriages, Trump elected, Me Too, COVID lockdowns. But we also had mass gunshots, mass shootings. We had school lockdowns. And so as a parent, if you were a parent of a Gen Z, you wanted to bubble wrap your kids from a lot of things that were going on from a violence standpoint. But what was also going on at the same time, social media was born. And so while we as parents and managers, we were protecting our children from all of this that was going on outside of our homes, a lot of violence and such, what was really happening is the Wild West was happening in social media, and nobody was really thinking about the unintended consequences of the social media. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all of the details of this, but I encourage you to read that book. But what happened is that social media rewired a generation. When you were a teenager, did you know how much a CEO made? Did you know about how corporate corruption happened? Did you see violence on your phone or in your world? No. So all that knowledge, all that visibility was brought to children, and there was really no guardrails. So we were protecting them from the bubble outside of us, but at home they were getting exposed to things that we didn't know about. So if we think about the idea of I'm going to date myself, but you know that song, We Live in a Material World, right? Okay, Madonna, I'm dating myself. This is about living in a virtual world. Not surprising. This data is something you already know. This is 2 hours per day. They're streaming. It's YouTube. It's video games. But guess what? So online, 15% only are doing things online with friends. So maybe they were playing video games and maybe we're thinking, oh, they're online with their friends. Well, in general, even though they're living in a virtual world, they're not actually most of the time online with their friends. So I think that that's an important thing. So they're living in this world, a virtual world, and they're not in the material world, which is kind of in the real world outside. But so I want to ask you guys a question, and you can go ahead and put it in the chat. I want you to tell me, now, I have a podcast called The Business of Joy, and my very first question I say, what was your very first job? Not your first job out of college, but what was your first job? Did you mow lawns? Were you a babysitter? Were you a busboy, a dishwasher? And how old were you? Put that in the chat, because I'm just curious to see what everybody had as their first job. And what happens is mentally we always start with after college or in high school. But what happens is, if this world that I just showed, this, we're protecting our children from the outside world, but inside they're seeing all the social media. Guess what's happening? Their first jobs, younger than 16, and I'm talking about the babysitting jobs, the lawn mowing jobs, only 15% of Gen Z had a job before they were 16. So think about those entrepreneurial skills that you have, and you talk to people about running a paper route, doing that babysitting. It's entrepreneurial, and guess what? Those Gen Z that actually had a job, what we showed in our data was that they actually make more money, and they're more likely to be married. Isn't that interesting? So is it the fact that they had more experiences, they were more socially connected? I don't know if it's correlation or causation for all you math people out there, but it's just fascinating when you can see the connected tissue about that. So then, okay, when you ask the question, what percent live with parents? And Harrison, maybe you can shout out to me what some of those are seeing. I want you guys in the chat to actually tell me what percent of Gen Z actually live with their parents today. So Harrison, what numbers are people popping in? Are we seeing any? Not yet. So everybody put them in there. So put those numbers in. Let's see that participation.
65, 90, 30, 35.
So, okay, 65, 95. So the answer is 35%. So 35% of 18 to 34-year-olds today say that they're living at home. But let me ask you this. And just really quickly in the chat again, and Harrison, you can just give me the answers. I don't see the chat as much right now. But so the gender divide, if you had to say, who do you think, men or women, are the more likely to live at home? Anybody guesses? So put in there, men or women are more likely to live at home with their parents?
Almost all men.
Almost all men. Okay, we have this stereotype. Do you have a son that might be at home playing video games maybe? Is that the stereotype? Maybe. So when I look at this, the reality of it, it's actually even, but it's different by age. So young men, 43% are actually saying that they live at home. That is a ton. But then when they kind of get older, then that changes to 29%. All right, but here's the thing. Women, half of women 18 to 24 live at home with their parents. But then what happens is it actually drops down to 21%. So they might be more likely to come home, and maybe some of you guys have Gen Z kids that are out of college. They come home, but then they're more likely to get off and going. But here's the thing. If I think about what is the unintended consequence of this? So the reality of it is, when I ask a question in this survey, then it's a very interesting question. We hear about adulting, and I asked a question, where do you go when you want to find out something adulting? By far, the answer is parents, because they're living at home. Now as parents, I'm like, heck yeah, but then we're just projecting ourselves on them. Way down the list is figuring it out on your own. So maybe the idea of figuring out on its own maybe should be the top, and then asking friends or parents for help should be down the list. But we've trained them, we're protecting them, we're bubble wrapping them, and there are unintended consequences of all of these things that are helping us explain what's going on. Now, this is a data point that I know many of you might have seen in the work I've been sharing. But so they race to get to college, they prepare their resume, they basically, the AP classes, the sports, the volunteering, they get to college, only 27% say it was definitely worth it. And their job coming out of school, 25% say they're extremely satisfied. So they're trying to figure it out, but they get there and they're like, what just happened? I'm not even doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I will tell you just a fun fact on the extremely satisfied for the at work situation. So the at work, if you are in person, you are way more satisfied out of the three groups. In person, greater satisfaction. And guess what the least satisfied? You might be thinking hybrid. Well, least satisfied is actually the least satisfied. The all at home, that's the one that's kind of in the middle. People think hybrid is good, but you're kind of on the fence. You're not all the way in person, you're not all the way remote, and they're the least satisfied. So hybrid is the least satisfied. In person is the most. So what is the insight for this chapter? And I want you to try to think about and write these down, take screenshots of them, share them on social media. But basically what we're seeing is that this idea of protected, not prepared, it's from bubble wrap to battle ready. And so I want to challenge you, how do we trade the training wheels for a mop? So I think the idea of getting that early job is so important in training them to go to college and be prepared and actually into the workforce. Now, if we can go back to the other screen, Mackenzie, I have a surprise because I am the joy person. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna give away a book really quickly. So as you guys know, I have a book, ta-da, and Harrison's gonna give me and Harrison's been fantastic getting all this together. Oh my gosh, so Therese Sprinkle, oh my gosh. So congratulations, Therese, we're gonna get you a book to you soon. Woohoo! Go, 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 go. All right. So remember, trade the training wheels for a mop, which is like, we gotta not bubble wrap these kids. And especially if you're a parent of a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, these are important insights. So let's talk about how do we move from protected to prepared. And I wanna talk about this idea of being born to discover, not defend. Yay, I see that. Thanks, Therese. That's great. All right. So, born to discover, not defend. As parents, these children grew up in a bubble-wrapped world. So guess what happens? I can speak up myself at work or school without backfiring. 56 and 50% said, you know what, that is really important to me. And then I asked, well, how satisfied are you with that? And so you can see at school, there's actually a 19-point gap. And what does that mean? I'm gonna give you a story. And Harrison and I have been talking about, and I've heard this story before. What you hear Gen Z saying is sometimes they're scared to even go out in public because they're scared they're gonna get videoed or doing something silly or just plain stupid, and then the world's gonna know about it. And whether it's a conversation or just going to a concert, and even with the whole kiss camera thing lately, there's just this concern that my life is gonna backfire if I step outside the door. And this is, again, it's because they've been protected, not prepared. And that's not good. So here's a question for you guys, and you can put the answers in the chat here, is do not use AI daily, and do not use. What % of Gen Z today say they do not use it daily? AI. 35, 20, 10, 55, 70, don't use it daily. Okay, I always say this is what we see as the bell curve of data, so it's really cool. So the answer is, let's see, 30%. So 30% say they don't use it, but 70% say they're using AI daily. Now, I'm going to show you another thing, but Harrison pointed out to me just yesterday is that it actually varies by seasonality, that the use of AI drops dramatically for kids during the summer, which makes a lot of sense. And Lauren, I forgot to mention that at the beginning, but the sample size of this particular survey is 1,000, but it will also blend in data from 2 other studies, so of 3,000 overall. And then my ongoing Journey Back to Joy research is 85,000 consumers. So, but most of it's going to be 1,000. So great question. Sorry, I should have mentioned that up at the front. All right, so 30% do not use AI daily. If Gen Z, if we're thinking about how are they using it, we can actually get a little bit of insight into it. So we asked them, what is the most frequent thing that you do? So what's fascinating is, look at this. So 36%, it's just like random stuff, right? But only 24% for school or work. So let's process this. Today, AI is more, for Gen Z, it's more about curiosity than productivity. So make sure, like, write that one down, because that one's really good. It's about being curious. And so we talk about Gen Z, like, maybe they're not so curious, but they're using ChatGPT in a way that maybe others aren't. And so how do we think about it is that the first touch is actually play. And they were kind of robbed of their free play. It's noted in that Anxious Generation book. That generation just didn't have as much free play, unstructured time, because of all the parents' fear, because of all the race to college, and because of devices. And so the idea of play, maybe that is a role that AI can provide. But then the hard part is, and this is the truth for all ages, is that Gen Z also wants to make sure that stuff is clearly labeled. So if you're a brand owner that has a customer service and you're using bots to do that, people just want to know that it's actually clearly labeled, because without it, it creates this instant skepticism, even for Gen Z, who is very, very adept at technology. And so transparency equals trust, monumental for Gen Z. It even's higher for the older you get, but it's super high even for Gen Z. Now, this last slide in this section about AI, I want you to reframe how you think about AI. And we're gonna, if you want to dig into this with me later, we can definitely do this. But look at the headline at the top, is if AI can be about instilling curiosity, it can instill creativity to actually get to commercial wins. And I'm not talking actually about the off-the-shelf ideation bots that are out there, because some of that may strip out that creativity. But if we think about AI conceptually as kind of a sandbox for ideas, that it can actually generate revenue for tomorrow. And why is this idea even important? Because right now, AI is all being talked about as productivity, saving money. I don't hear much people talking about it as creativity and revenue generating. Now, truth be told, this photo, used with permission, is my daughter. So when I was thinking about what is the visual that I want to have for this plane in the sandbox, I thought of this photo. So it makes me smile to see this. This is my daughter at the beach. So she loved that. All right, so let's keep going. So when we think about the idea of how do Gen Z spend time, so we're in this chapter of Born for Discovery, Not Defend. What do they do at home? So here, I know that's kind of hard to see, and Mackenzie, maybe let's pop that full screen, thank you. So at home, it's basically, I mostly ate at home, I played videos at home, I binged watched TV, I ordered delivery, I picked up takeout. So that makes sense, right? I'm a Gen Z, I'm in my 20s, and these are all the things I'm doing at home. I'm staying at my parents' house, a lot of them, and I'm kind of in my room, all right? But if we look at the next slide, these are the things that are out and about. I grabbed fast food, I hung out with friends, I ate at a restaurant, I hung out at a park or beach with friends, and I dined in. But do we see the difference is that there's just not as many things that are out and about. And so this idea of experiencing the world, not in a virtual world, but in the material, real world, there's opportunity. And given my research, I wanted to ask the Gen Z, and I want you guys to put the answer in the chat here. I asked them, what is the thing that gives you the most joy? And what do you want more of when it comes to that kind of joy? So in the chat, played video games, binge watched favorite shows, hung out in person with my friends. So I see C, C, B, B, what else? Let's see, B, A. So again, we see a variety of things going on. All right, so drum roll please. The answer is C. Now, it is a close difference. Hung out with friends is the thing that they want most, 29%, and they can only rank 3 of them. And then playing video games and binge watching. Why is this so important? It is so important because every data point I'm going to show you today is this need for in-person connection. And guess what? If you are addicted to your phone, and I know many adults beyond Gen Z are, if you just say, put down your phone, that's like telling somebody that has a gambling problem, a drinking problem, a drug problem, just stop. That's not the way to do it. As brand owners and brand leaders, we have to be able to create connections that they want to do. So it's not about saying stop doing something. That is basically, we've got to get them moving towards connection because they're actually doing that. So when it comes to playing games, we actually had a big debate about that. Some people play video games and they have their friends online and they're texting, but it is still different than sitting next to somebody. And I even found out, my son was telling me that you can't even today in most video games, in the old days you would have 2 people sitting on the sofa playing a game together. Those consoles don't even exist anymore. They're designed for a single player, and if you want to have another player, you have to have another gaming device in another room. So even the industry is promoting single game playing, which is fascinating. All right, so we are at the end of Born to Discover, Not to Defend. So here's what I want to propose. We have to take the guardrails down, and we've got to open the roads. So whether it's AI being used as creativity, sometimes, and again, I know I'm guilty, we get kind of catatonic on our phones. We just get dropped in there, and we've just got to let the curiosity drive us. Go for a walk without your headphones on. Go just outside and listen and enjoy, and go to dinner, put your phones down. I will tell you that Gen Z, when I asked them what do they crave most, they literally said the fact that they wanted to have more restaurant meals together with real connections with their friends out of a list of 12 things. So that's crazy. So let's go back to the other, out of the full screen. And we're going to give away another book. All right. I want to make sure you guys heard that point. Out of a big list of what do they want more of, thank you. So wave Harrison. He's going to come back in. There he is. So basically, I had a big list of 12 things. And I said, what do you miss the most? What do you wish you had more of? So it wasn't joy. It was a different question. And basically, the number one thing is real connections with meals and real conversations. And so for those people that have anything to do with restaurants, I keep screaming this from the mountaintops: shrinking dining rooms, self-fulfilling prophecy. It's just the experience isn't worth it and people don't want to go. So real connections, Gen Z is craving. Put your phones away. All right, we have a book. Are we ready? Drum roll, please. Kimberly Williford, we will be sending you a book. So, yay, Kimberly. Congratulations. All right. So, I hope you guys, I know I'm going a little bit fast just because we got a little bit of a late start. But where we are in this conversation is protected more than prepared. We bubble wrapped them, and we need to get them more battle ready. We need to stop saying well, that wasn't the way it was when I grew up, because truly this generation grew up differently. I know every generation says that, but the facts show it really is different. Born to discover, not defend. How do we find and encourage creativity and curiosity? Because we're born with that. You don't tell a baby to go figure out walking. You don't tell a baby to figure out the blocks. That discovery mode is really important to our humanness, and technology and all of these things and the global pandemic, all of these things took that away. So I'm going to spend the next amount of time on this idea of when joy is greater than fear, growth begins. And I want to be able to show you this framework. Now, I'm going to give credit to my daughter. So everybody in my family, we're the Millers. So if you know that movie, it's pretty funny. We're the Millers, and this project has been a group effort, and Harrison's been amazing too. My daughter came up with this analogy for a growth mindset, and I'm going to explain why. When you think about resilience, a lot of times people talk about trees, the stress wood, the trees have to go through the storms, and the more they go through the storms, they do that. They get stronger. But for a flower, it's just an interesting metaphor because not all flowers bloom. Not all flowers bloom at the same time. Sometimes they need more water. And it's just a different kind of metaphor than like this big sturdy tree. And so I'm going to show you this idea and connect the dot, this idea of when joy is greater than fear, growth begins. Now I want to tell you that you're going to see this data and maybe you're going to think about it just through a lens of work. I want to tell you that the way we ask these questions, it's their life, it's their work, it's their relationships. It's easy to project about work, but it's so much more than that. All right, so what I'm going to explain is just one little nerdy research chart here. So we basically, to get to this data in this framework, we had 40 attributes. And what we do is we mathematically group them together. And the way we ask the question is, 5-point scale, does this describe me completely? Okay, can you imagine? 5-point scale, all the way down to does not describe me at all. And so what I want to show you is out of these 40 statements, what are the ones that just bubble to the top? And the reason that's important, I call these kind of these category truths or these kind of intrinsic mindsets to what Gen Z is thinking about their life, their work, their relationships, and just surviving in this world. So, and I'm going to show you the actual attributes underneath. So the first is consistency. It's prove it and then repeat it. And then the connection is listen to be real and then challenge. And that is basically how do I earn confidence by doing things. It's not just looking at a YouTube video, it's actually getting out there and doing it. There's all this bad rap about Gen Z's lazy, they don't want to work, I have to walk on eggshells, I can't figure out my kids, I can't figure out my employees. We're not asking the right questions, guys. When you ask the right questions, they can tell you exactly what they need. And that's what this is the most exciting part for me. And this is when I shared this construct with some colleagues. They're like, Lisa, this is gold. So let me walk you through. Now, I know we will send the recording out so you'll be able to see these. I know it looks a little small here. But basically, this idea of consistency. I trust actions more than words. I trust people who show up, not just when it's convenient. That's really interesting, right? And that this other one is that I respect boundaries even if I don't get them. Now, I will tell you just a quick story, is when writing this survey, I had to always challenge myself about this idea of therapy speak, and I wish I had more time to go into it, but Gen Z has expanded uses words like safe space and these words, but we really made sure that these words resonated with Gen Z, but we tried to get out of this idea of therapy speak, which is so predominant on social media right now. So let's look at connection. I notice when people are listening to me. So that was in one of the top, out of 40 attributes, one of the top 2. I want support, but I want feedback. So if you're thinking that Gen Z is like, they cry, they don't show up when I give them feedback, no, they actually want support. So what is the difference between support and feedback? And then they do want spaces, they're not trying to hide, they actually just want a place to sometimes just get away from the noise. And then challenging, this is a great one. The more hard things I do, the more confident I feel. They did not get those early childhood experiences of mowing the grass, babysitting, even some of the things during the pandemic, high school challenges. They just didn't experience them given the circumstances. They didn't write those circumstances. It's just the environment that they grew up in, that we made, basically. But let's look at this. So that's the first, the three. Those three intrinsic things, the 3 C's. Now, I'm going to take it further and give you 7 what I'm calling mindsets in the metaphor of this flower. So the flower at the top represents 16%, are basically aggregating to being confident and capable. So what does that mean, though? That means 84% is holding them back. And that, my friends, is what you guys are probably experiencing if you're a parent, an employee, even trying to figure out how to market to Gen Z. 84% is holding them back. Are you guys ready to see the underneath of this? Like what's in the soil that is holding them back? Okay, let's look at it. So what we can do mathematically is, it just makes me tear up. When I was working on this, that 14%, I was working with my daughters, and when we were reading the attributes, my daughter just says, I want to cry for those people because they're in survival mode, and it's heart-wrenching. And I'm going to show you those attributes. We've got a big group that's just overwhelmed in the middle, but there's different variables that create that overwhelm. And then 24%, they're ready to grow, they're ready, but they're not feeling like they got the opportunity. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these. And I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly, and there's so much data. So for you data people out there, I got lots of it, but I'm only going to show the highlights for today. So let's look at it. So when we look at these 7 mindsets, you can see level 1, which is that survival mode. The overwhelmed, think about a picture in your mind, feel these people. There's a group that's just afraid to start. They can't get it off go. They're boxed in. The curiosity is on hold. So they're just stuck in the middle. But then that level 3, they're ready. They're ready for real talk and real growth. And you know what? They're ready to build trust, but they need your help. And then we've got confident and capable is that last group. So what I'm going to do is, and Mackenzie, let's leave this on full screen. I know we hadn't planned on that, but I think people are wanting to see the details here. So let's just leave it on full screen. So let's look at the attributes. Now what I'm so Sharon, yes, the difference between men and women, we absolutely have that data. We can look at it by age cohort, we can look at it by gender, by ethnicity, and I wish I had a whole lot more time on this, but let me just show you on survival mode, these are the attributes. I filter out a lot because there's too much going on to handle it. I can be included and still feel invisible. Let that sink in. I can be included, but I still feel invisible. I'm tired of being expected to do everything. Most people don't get how much pressure. So this is the group that is very difficult, having difficult times. This next area, I really truncated this, and I'm going to go a little bit quickly so we can get to the end. And I forgot to mention, just because we had a little wonky start, we are going to do a live Q&A at the end. And so if you can stay, definitely stay and ask questions, because I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys. So the 46 overwhelmed in the middle, you can kind of read this. And I know Kat Smith, you're on here. This is where that attribute, I feel like curiosity got trained out of me. Let that sink in. I feel like curiosity got trained out of me. I'm not ready to face real world problems. I feel like I'm supposed to explain who I am before I figured it out. Did you guys know what you wanted to be when you were 20 or 18? No. So why are we expecting this next generation? I overthink things. So these give you that idea. So then the growth zone, look at this. Do you feel how these attributes are just so different? I use boundaries to protect my peace, not avoid responsibility. That's very different than hiding. I've learned to trust actions. I work hard. The more I work, the more confident I feel. And I don't want yes men or cheerleaders. I want mentors. Do you feel how this group is ready to go? They're ready for leadership. But if you try to put these things in somebody in the survival mode, they will crumble. Are you hearing that? If you have a one-size-fits-all and try to, oh, let's just put a mentor, let's invite them to things, it's not going to be the right idea. So let's look at this top group. They are the top 16% of these mindsets. These mindsets, by the way, while I do quantify them, if you know Gen Z, they might have a confident moment and they might have a survival moment. And so these are like, I feel like a chocolate cake, but I'm gonna eat a salad for dinner. And so they can apply these feelings and mindsets to different types of situations. But the magnitude of the scale is what's really critical. So you can read through, I think discomfort is part of growth. I don't need to have all the answers before I can begin. Very different than that afraid to start. I feel nervous, feeling nervous doesn't mean I'm not ready. So this idea of seeking discomfort, nervous is good. And we as older adults, this is one of the most important things because we feel like if they don't want to try, it's just because they're lazy or because they don't want to. It's not that. We have 84% that have some other issues. And I feel confident that I have the people who listen to me without judgment. But are we feeling how how people approach is very, very different? And you might be saying, okay, what do I do now? So the reality, and Mackenzie, let's go ahead and go back to the other, thank you. So what I want to tell you here is I was blown away. I knew this was good when I loaded up these 7 ideas and I started looking at job satisfaction. I started looking at what things they need. I looked at demographics and it all just clicked. No doubt the people in survival mode, they really don't like their job, like single digit. The people that are confident and capable, they really like their job. And so all of these parts of their lives, again, it's their life, it's their behaviors, it's their relationships, it's all based on these things. But let's look at how we can take it further. I want to give you 2 examples of the power of this data. I asked a question, again, we worked so hard, we worked our butts off on this questionnaire to get to things that nobody, I keep saying, you won't find this on Google, you won't find this in ChatGPT, because these questions are grounded in how they're living their lives. So when you think about the overwhelmed middle, what I had a question is, what breaks trust? When you are working or at school, what breaks trust? So giving false hope, so that's for the survival mode. The not following through on premise for afraid to start. Making decisions without asking for input, boxed thinking. So there we go, thank you. Thank you. Y'all see, this is what happens. They just figure out that it needs to be full screen. So look at this. So if I'm boxed in, making big decisions without asking for input, that's when you break my trust. Curiosity on hold, they're like, not much, I don't expect much anyway. But the growth zone, it's saying one thing and doing something else. And then how about this one? The confidence and clarity. Changing direction constantly with no clarity. Like, hey, I'm cool, you can change, but by golly, you just better be able to tell me why we're doing something. So look at the polar ends of this on the survival mode. If you give me false hope and sugarcoat, which is not giving the feedback I need, that is when you break my trust. I know when I'm not doing well, so don't sugarcoat it. And then on the far side, hey man, I'm ready for change, just gotta tell me why we're doing things. So this is the power of this data. We have one more example. So this is about what energizes me at work or school. So if I'm in survival mode, the idea of less pressure to always perform, that's what gets me really energized. What gets my afraid to start people energized? Feeling like my ideas are heard. Okay, think about that. I'm afraid to start, but if you hear me, I might just take that first step. The curiosity on hold, I'm gonna jump a little bit. The curiosity on hold, more freedom in how I work. So get this, curiosity on hold, I just wanna go do some stuff, but man, just give me that rope. you are way too tight holding that rope on me, and I just need some freedom here, because I got some ideas and I got curiosity. And then real growth, it's saying one thing, doing another, and you can kind of see how that plays out. Look at the green on the far side, confident. Humor and connection. Could we all have a little bit more joy at work and school? I think so. But guess what? If you try to have culture events and fun events and team building events, your survival mode is going to say, thanks for including me, but I don't belong. So do you see how you have to be really thoughtful and mindful to be able to help them grow? And that this is why the flower analogy is so powerful, because we are trying to help them bloom. We always talk about launching and blooming, and some people are late bloomers. This is quantitative data to understand why. And so what I wanted to talk about now is, as we bring it to the end, and I think we are almost right at our time. I guess we are doing pretty good. 5 minutes. Harrison's holding up signs for me. So what I wanted to talk to you about is something I've never done before. So when I talk about jumping out of my comfort zone myself, doing the research 5 years ago, that was way out of my comfort zone. Measuring joy in the middle of a global pandemic, writing a book, doing a podcast, still working with my day in and day out clients while I'm working on this joy project. And now this. So here's my next way out of my comfort zone. Okay, so I practice what I preach. So what I wanted to talk about, oh, I have one more slide. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Ha! All right, so save that for later. So when I think about the so what, now what for this, I wanted to give you clear and actionable things that we could do. So in survival mode, what do they need? They need stability and foundation support. But the action is we've got to get rid of the noise. We've got to build the trust in the small moments. If you're overwhelmed, they need confidence. And they got to break the goals into small pieces. The growth zone, give me those mentorship opportunities and pair me with people that can help me grow. And then lastly, that challenge, they're ready to go. Give them more responsibility. But if you do the actions on the capable group and you throw that at the survival mode, guess what? They're going to wilt because they're not ready. Okay? So this gives you definitely some very, very tangible things that you can start actioning right away. All right, so, oh my gosh, I had 2 slides. This is the Harrison saying, I actually have 3 slides. That's pretty funny. All right, see, I'm all out of my comfort zone already. All right, so I did want to end on this idea, which is we have to help Gen Z understand, just like joy over fear in the economy during pandemic, we have to find a way to get to joy forward. And it's this idea of growth starts where comfort ends. So I think of it for a movie or a book. You know, you've got to turn the scary page to see what's next, to get to the good stuff. So basically what I have is one more winner. Harrison is saying, woo! I got the 10-minute end code, so I was jumping right to the end. We do have one more book. All right. Lauren Connor, not my K-H-N-E-R. So I know I've been seeing you a lot, so I appreciate all your support. So congratulations, you get a book. Excellent. Okay, so these are those 3 takeaways. This is the write it down moment. Screenshot it, post it on social media, because this is what we need to take away. We got to take the training wheels off, and I love the analogy, give them a mop. We've got to get real world. The creativity is the antidote to catatonic, particularly AI. It's a creativity tool. It's not a productivity tool. And how do we reframe that? And then we've got to work on where growth starts, where comfort ends. So these are 3 very, very key actionable insights that I hope you can leverage immediately. But I genuinely hope that you're craving more, because there is, as a researcher, it was hard. I have half the slides. If you guys were on the last webinars, I have half the slides that I had last time, and I still felt like I was going through it so fast. But I want to give you guys an opportunity to go on this journey with me. Today is not the end and the final destination. It really is the start, and I'm so passionate about making a difference for Gen Z in their lives and their work. And so I hope you can go on this journey with me. And what I want to do, and again, out of my comfort zone, there's this cool studio that's right down the hall from here. It has 50 seats live. And then I want to do a September 24th activation session. For my clients, I do this as part of every segmentation study. I get people together and we work on it. We have a structured session, the knowledge, the activation, the tools. So we're going to have it at 50 people, so seats are limited, and then virtual. And what Harrison is going to do is he's going to put a link, and so I don't know if you've already done that, Harrison, already there, but there's a link that Harrison just put in there, and we'll send it out with that. But I wish that you will join me on this journey for this important research to make a difference, and that's my passion. So what I'd like to do, I think, as always, I try to land that plane pretty well on time. So I think we have 2 minutes left. But what I would love to be able to do is if we can, I think, go to that. We're going to say I've never done live Q&A like this either. Definitely done it on regular Zoom. But what if you have questions, and I know Harrison has a list that people already sent in ahead of time. But what I want to do is just, if you can stay, great, and just listen and learn. This part of it will not be shared in the recording. So just so you know, this part of the conversation will not be part of the recording. And then the other thing, so Harrison's going to come bring me the questions. Thank you. I tell you what, it really does take a village. Whew. I did want to offer kind of, because I am the joyful person. One of the things that we are doing, when you click on that link, hopefully everybody's clicking on it, I do have 2 different price points. So if you do register in the next couple of weeks before the end of August, then there's a little bit of a discount. But I have an idea. For those that register before the end of the month, I'm going to pick one person, and I'm going to do a virtual lunch and learn for your team, whether it's a marketing team, your executive team, and share this research with them. I want everybody to hear it because I think it's the key. And this is why people are saying, Lisa, this is gold. I've never seen this before. The Gen Z themselves love these questions. I literally cried when I saw their comments about how much they loved the survey. We are on to something, my friends, so join me on that.